Hello, happy Thursday out there, people. We have gone through another whole week, much to my surprise. I'm sure I'm not the only one out there that feels like life is just flying along. Nice to see your faces popping in here. But yeah, so this is our weekly update in Stone Stitches. Anyone who was here last week, hey, thanks for coming in. I started talking last week about the Brutalk knit along and detailing through the pattern. Last week we also had the release of all of the individual patterns for Celtic Knits Club, but I didn't have a chance to talk about them because I was talking about Brutalk and I didn't want to end up with it too long. So I thought I would do an overview of the Celtic Knits Club patterns for anybody who has perhaps not seen them as they came along, or who was interested in just getting individual patterns by themselves. So when we began the club last year, I usually start with smaller projects and gradually work up towards larger ones. Combined in the last one, or I suppose this year really, 2021's, where we had a blanket where it was actually being worked on with a series of swatches all the way through the club. Now, if there was only one particular project, or perhaps there's only one style of project that you're interested in, then these individual ones are going to be of far more interest to you, because you can have the patterns or a workshop. The pattern does come with the workshop, so you don't have to buy separately. And then there's also yarn kits, so they can all be mixed and matched as you so desire. When you get a pattern or a workshop with the yarn kit and you put them in the shopping cart together, there's a bundle offered on the two of them together. So the first one that was out last year this is Durka. And of course, I always realize after the fact that I've still got little bits that weren't fully woven in, which is very foolish of me. I think I've got the whole thing done, and then I start pulling them out and I realize that there's strands in there. Assume I'm not the only person that does that. So this hat is Durka, and you may also recognize this from a more recent pattern, the Durka sweater, because it uses the same stitch patterns, your faux cable, blackberry stitch, and the ladder stitch. But this is just in a hat version, and it's got a pom-pom, optional pom-pom for the top. So if they're new stitches to you, they're all in a workshop. If you've done stitches like that before, then just the pattern by itself. This Blosta color I actually really like. I think of it as navy, but I've known of people will describe it as royal blue. Let me see, where's the color? Oh, I don't actually have it up here. I've just realized I didn't put it on the shelf behind me. I'll need to amend this, but you can see it here. But it's Durka is the name of the color if you're looking for it in the shop. You can either buy the Blosta by itself, or if you want to get it with a project bag, then you can just get the project kit. So that's Durka. Next one, as we're moving along, this here is Tashka, and this one's designed by Emer Early. Now, because you can still buy it as part of the bundle or an individual workshop through me. If you want the pattern by itself, you're going to need to go follow Plays with Fibre on here, or find her either on Ravelry or on Payhip for the individual pattern. And this is worked flat, so you begin up here, the tip, with this little point here. You're increasing all the way along here with the cables, and then once you reach this point, you're also doing garter stitch. And it's actually very clever what you did with this, because row gauge of cables and garter stitch is a little different. Garter compresses vertically, but cables aren't going to be quite as, or our stockinette stitch doesn't compress quite as much vertically. So what is actually done is every few rows, there's just a short row at the edge of the garter stitch here. So it means that there's just a few more rows of garter stitch, so it doesn't get crushed down, and it means that it lies a lot more flat when you've got it lying down like this, because otherwise you can find that the garter stitch pulls a little tighter than the cable, and the cable spreads out relative to it. And it's just such an unusual construction, because then it increases all the way down here, and so by the time you've got to the end, the garter section is quite wide, but you come back and you seam all the way from here down around the corner here. It's hard to show because it's on a spiral, so it doesn't, when you're doing it first of all until you put it in together, it's hard to see. So I think that a lot of people found the video quite helpful for figuring out how the seaming worked on this, because it doesn't always seem to make any sense until you put it down and you go, oh, that's what's supposed to happen. So this one is the Blasta Colour Ore. It uses 2 skeins. Again, you can get Blasta by itself or in the Tashka yarn kit for this. But yeah, it's one of my favourite colours. Anyone who speaks Irish out there or would like to know a little bit more Irish, the Irish ore means gold, which this I think really is a good name for that colour. Else Louise, you're working on yours in Blasta Spare. Very good. Here, I'll pull that up for anyone who wants to see it as well. This is spare. Another Irish word, spare is the Irish for sky. So it's kind of a sky blue, so spare means sky. I'll end up teaching you all Irish before you know it as we're going through the whole process. This is project number 3, and this one are the Hort mitts. Now this is done in a marled colour here. You can kind of see it speckled through. The 2 colours that are twisted together are Leah, which is grey. It actually does mean grey in Irish, and Or, the gold colour I've just showed you. So you've got cable running up along the side on this side, and where is it? Cable running up along the side on this side, and the rest of it is in moss stitch. The flip top version, it's the same for both up to here, but you've got you join some ribbing along here, and then you work decreases up to the tip, and you've got a complete thumb. So this is going to very much depend on your climate. We were talking, you might have spotted we actually put up in the grid there, we were asking people whether they were more of a fingerless or a flip top kind of a person. And I got some really interesting answers, because there was one person said they like easy access to their fingers, so flip top is great. Others, a bit like in Ireland here actually, fingerless tends to be more popular because our weather doesn't go down below freezing all that often, so that's usually sufficient. Very cold climates, you probably do want something more. Another option that was put out there was somebody saying that they often make the top of fingerless mittens a lot longer, normally wear it folded down and then flip it up. So it's a different version of a flip top, but it's another way of using your mitts to keep your fingers warm when you need it, or to have them open when you don't need it. So there's lots of ways of doing it. I'm going to try and pull over. I've got a big stack of stuff down here. The final one in the club that actually came together over the course of it is, of course, the Shaskar Blanket, which is, let me open it up here. It uses 10 skeins of Nua, 1 of each of those middle colours, and then 6 of the one that goes all around. And these are in fact this is the Tashka stitch pattern, this is the Durka stitch pattern, and down here are the Hort mitt stitch pattern. So it was used as you were going through the projects as a series of swatches that they could be put together, and then the outer one was all done in just biased garter squares, or mitered I should say, where they're decreasing as you're going along, but you start off with stitches on 2 sides. There was a couple of people also went and replaced some of the squares with cable, because they preferred doing cable to garter, and they included it. I've seen a couple of people who've done I-cord edging, garter edging. There's someone planning on doing a knitted on cable edging, which I think would be really pretty. So there's a load of different things that you can do. I would suggest kind of sticking with the I-cord joining for the blankets, because I think it really gives it a bit of cohesiveness. But there was even a huge amount of variations in that, because there was one knitter who did 1 set of joining around the 6 in the middle, and then the outer ones she actually went with the matching colour for the squares, so they blended in. So it really felt very much like the cables were like a picture in the middle, and then all of the outer part was very much a framework fitting around it. So really pretty. So there's lots of different things you can do to really make the Shaskar Blanket, and particularly the finishing of it, your own. Now, if you have, if you want to knit the blanket yourself and work through it, you can get both the pattern again and the workshop with the yarn kit for it. If you get the 2 of them together, I've printed up these booklets. So it's a 12-page booklet which has got kind of finishing directions, all the cables, and there's a good bit of white space. You can kind of scribble in your own notes. So any ones that are ordered together are going to get a printed version of this. So you'll find the Shaskar on my website, and you can pop them into the basket, and I think it's a 5% discount in the two. Oh, Elsa Louise, you're wondering what sweater do I have on? This is the Mossy Way Sweater. This is an older one, and it's originally knit in Bloomsbury DK, which is a superwash yarn. Normally with superwash, I tend to veer away from for sweaters, but this sweater was actually designed to take advantage of the superwash, because superwash is kind of drapey and a little bit floppy, and so it's actually blocked to create a wider, kind of more drapey sweater, if you like. My favorite part about it here is there's little cables in between the ribbing down the side here, and the top part has all of the sleeve decreases worked on the top in the middle of the ribbing, which is kind of fun. It makes it more interesting than just a plain sleeve decrease. I actually put some kits up for these, but it's not in the Bloomsbury DK, it's in Vivacious DK, which is very similar. And in fact, I ended up accidentally ordering a ton extra of this color, because it was a complete mistake, because the amount I put an extra 0 into the order. So there is quite a bit of this blush color, which is very, very pretty pink. Not usually a big pink wearer, but these dusty type pinks are really, really bright, vivid pinks, more kind of in the cerise or purpley. I like both ends of the spectrum. It's the middle of the road that is never usually my favorite. It's why for newer yarn, I think the blush reminds me a little bit of the Cerebellum, that kind of deeper, slightly darker color, that I find it a much more interesting color. You think it's very interesting, and you love the blush, you'll order. Oh, excellent. Yeah, I know. If I'm going to accidentally order a lot of one color, it's a good color to have gotten it, because I like it. Whereas if I ended up with one that I was like, oh, it's okay, it should be a problem, but it's a lovely color, so we're all good. So does anyone else have any questions popping up here? Anyone who is actually in part of the Brewtalk Knit Along, or if you're curious about it, pop into the Knit Hub on the website, because there's some really interesting discussions going on. People are getting on very well with doing German short rows in brioche. And in fact, it was particularly fun because there was a lot of people, when they saw that, first of all, were like, okay, I'm never going to be able to manage this. And then they realized that it's remarkably simple and quite invisible. The only problem that I ran into, and I see other people did, is the fact that it's hard to figure out where they are. So once you put a marker in, you're covered for that base. What would you make? You want to make the ribosome cardigan? Would it work in Blosta? Yes, it would be superb in Blosta. In fact, it's almost a similar weight, a double knitting weight. So yeah, I would suggest that if anyone's thinking about ribosome, Blosta is a very good option. In fact, it's probably something I may even put up some yarn kits for that at some point, with some ideas for combinations. But you don't need to have a yarn kit. The Blosta, if you know the yardage, will work. Oh, Elsa Louise, you wanted to know how my kitten, Opal, aka Shadow, is doing. So the kids called her Opal, but anyone who's seen that kitten will know it is pure black when you're looking down on it. White splash in the nose and white paws, but from above, pure black. And it bounces around in the corners. So it is always under somebody's feet, and I'm always falling over it. So with the result that I think Shadow is what it needs to be. You joke. Thank you for your good customer service. Oh, you're very welcome. I like happy customers. Anyone on here knows that. But yes, so my kitten is good. She's growing, and she is completely mad because we've got 2 other cats as well. The 2 of them, we got together, and they were typical cats, and they were busy, but they weren't terribly over the top. This kitten, I don't know if it's because it's a kitten by itself or if it just happens to be its personality, but it is stark raving mad. It's nutty. It just bounces around. It never stops. It chews continuously. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's a fairly intense kitten to have around. if you hold it like this, it'll crawl up your shoulder and then it'll slide back down your back. Like, just do that over and over again. We've got a 3-foot climbing cat tower. Middle part of it is the scratching post, and then it's just fabric on the top and on the bottom. So it can scoot up to the top, and then when it's there, it slides its front paws down and it can reach the scratching part where it can grip on. Then it tries sliding its back paws down, but there's no grip, so then it does a full 360, spinning on its front claws, and then climbs back down from there. Very scary. So yeah, it definitely keeps us entertained, and I am glad we have a lot of people in our house, because when she gets too much for someone, it gets moved on to the next person. It's like, okay, I need you to cat sit for a little while. So yeah, we're all doing well. Elsa Louise, cooking supervisor. Yes, she sat on my shoulder all last night, the whole time when I was chopping vegetables and feeding the dog. She just sat up there perfectly happy. Yeah, she's a fun kitten to have around. So that is my pattern update and yarn update and kitty update. So you got the full update for the week. I'll see you next week. And if you've got any questions in the meantime, pop them up here. Or you actually might spot as well on Shopify, on my shop, I've got a new chat button. So you can also pop in there if there's something you need answered. If it's during the hours I'm in the office, I'll answer as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's usually going to be the next day. I'll pop in and get it to you. So, all right. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining me.